The world of the UFC thrives on chaos, drama, and unpredictability. Fighters rise and fall, legends are made and unmade, and controversies fuel headlines like a jacked-up commentator after a last-second knockout. But even by UFC standards, this week has been something else entirely. Conor McGregor, the self-proclaimed face of the fight game, has just taken another brutal hit, not in the octagon, but in court. Yet again, McGregor finds himself tangled in a legal mess that threatens his long-awaited return. Meanwhile, Bruce Buffer, the legendary voice of the UFC, the man who shouted "It's time" into the ears and hearts of millions, has officially announced when he'll hang up the microphone. The octagon will never sound the same again. And if that wasn't enough, Jon Bones Jones is back in the headlines. Not for a spectacular return or another title defense, but because he allegedly ran from a potential fight with interim champ Tom Aspinall. For many fans, this was the final straw. Conor McGregor is a man who has lived a life of extremes. Extreme success, extreme wealth, and extreme controversy. From knocking out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds to becoming the first simultaneous two-division UFC champ, McGregor's story has always been one of myth and madness. But his legend continues to erode with every courtroom defeat. On insert court date, a Dublin court ruled against McGregor in a high-profile civil suit stemming from an alleged bar incident in here. The case, brought by a former patron, claimed McGregor assaulted him without provocation. While McGregor's team attempted to settle, the court found grounds to proceed and ordered damages in the six-figure range, another public humiliation. This isn't an isolated case. McGregor has accumulated a laundry list of legal troubles, assault charges, lawsuits, and accusations ranging from property damage to battery. This latest loss only reinforces a narrative fans and critics have been whispering for years, that McGregor, once untouchable, is now unraveling. McGregor was scheduled, or at least expected, to return to the octagon before the end of the year, potentially facing Michael Chandler in what Dana White has hyped for over a year. But with this new legal headache and no official date set, those chances are slipping fast. More than just a PR problem, McGregor's court issues could derail licensing, international travel, and even endorsement deals. The UFC may still view him as a box office king, but they are increasingly facing a moral and legal minefield whenever they try to schedule him. And for McGregor, he seems more focused on social media feuds and whiskey promotions than fight preparation. Whether it's his $200 million proper no, 12 fortune, or his fleet of Lamborghinis, McGregor's post-fight empire was supposed to solidify his place as the sport's Michael Jordan. Instead, he risks becoming a cautionary tale, the fighter who flew too close to the sun and got burned in the courtroom instead of the cage. While McGregor's future is now filled with question marks, another UFC icon is taking matters into his own hands, with grace, class, and finality. Bruce Buffer, the golden voice of combat sports, has finally announced his retirement date. During an emotional sit-down interview on UFC Unfiltered, Buffer said, "I've loved every moment of this journey, but every story has a final chapter. I've decided my last official UFC event will be insert event date here. It's time to say goodbye." The news sent shockwaves across the MMA world. Fighters, fans, and fellow commentators took to social media to pay tribute to the man whose voice was the fight game. Buffer isn't just a ring announcer, he's a symbol. He is to MMA what Jim Ross is to pro wrestling, or Marv Albert is to basketball. Buffer has announced over 1,000 UFC fights and coined catchphrases like the main event of the evening that became iconic. His perfectly timed "it's time" before the first punch lands has become a goosebumps-inducing ritual for millions. He shared the octagon with legends, from Georgie St. Pierre to Khabib, from Ronda Rousey to Amanda Nunes. Fighters have said they don't feel like it's a real fight until Buffer calls their name. What comes next? While Buffer is stepping away from live events, he isn't disappearing. He'll continue doing promotional work, voiceovers, and has hinted at a potential memoir. But make no mistake, the UFC will never sound the same again. Who replaces him? Names are circulating, but none can truly replace Buffer. They can only follow in his echo. While McGregor loses in court and Buffer prepares to leave the octagon, Jon Jones, the UFC's most dominant yet divisive champion, is once again making headlines. This time, not for his brilliance inside the cage, but for allegedly ducking a fight outside of it. The call-out heard around the world. After months of anticipation, Tom Aspinall, the interim UFC heavyweight champion, publicly challenged Jon Jones for a unification bout at Madison Square Garden. Fans were thrilled. The UFC teased it. Social media exploded. And then, silence. Jones never responded. No call-outs, no promos, no training camp footage, nothing. Then, like clockwork, whispers began circulating that Jones had declined the fight. Dana White, when pressed, was vague. John's doing his thing. We'll see what happens. Jones' critics were swift to pounce. This wasn't the first time Bones had avoided a rising threat. Many believe he delayed his heavyweight debut for years to avoid fighting Francis Ngannou. Now, with Ngannou in PFL, Jones was gifted the belt after defeating an aging Cyril Gane. But Tom Aspinall is different. Young, explosive, smart, and dangerous. A true heavyweight, not a light heavyweight playing dress-up. If Jones is avoiding this fight, many see it as a tacit admission. He's past his prime and doesn't want to risk the legacy. Jon Jones is arguably the greatest fighter in MMA history. But greatness demands risk. If he chooses to retire or avoid unification, it will forever stain his final chapter. Is Jon protecting his legacy? Or is he just no longer the king we thought he was? Social media has been a firestorm this week. MMA, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, all buzzing with reactions to these three bombshell stories. On McGregor, he's finished. Too much drama, not enough discipline. Just retire already. Love him or hate him, the sport will miss him when he's gone. Dude needs a court camp more than a fight camp. On Bruce Buffer, I literally cried. Grew up hearing that voice. The UFC should do a full tribute at his final event. Give him the legend's send-off. No Buffer equals no soul. On Jon Jones, Aspinall would destroy him and he knows it. You can't be GOAT if you're ducking real smoke. Jon's legacy is already sealed. But this is a weak move. The combination of legal drama, retirements, and ducked fights has shaken the UFC community, both hardcore fans and casual observers. The future looks uncertain, and the sport stands on the brink of a generational shift. If McGregor wants to return, he has to clear his legal hurdles fast. UFC 300 has passed. Chandler is still waiting, and fan interest is waning. At some point, McGregor either fights or fades into irrelevance. And if he loses again, that could be the final curtain. The UFC has an opportunity here to send Buffer off like the legend he is. A final fight card built around his farewell. One last its time, before the lights dim. That moment would be historic. If Jones walks away from Aspinall, the damage to his reputation might be irreparable. But if he steps up and wins, he reclaims his title as the undisputed GOAT. The decision is his. But the clock is ticking. The UFC has always evolved in stages. From the early days of Royce Gracie and no-weight class brawls, to the Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz boom era, to the global explosion with stars like Georges St-Pierre, Ronda Rousey, Anderson Silva, and of course, Conor McGregor. Every so often, the organization reaches a critical turning point, a moment when the old guard begins to fade, and new blood must rise to take its place. With Conor McGregor facing legal turmoil and fading athletic credibility, and Jon Jones embroiled in a legacy-defining moment of hesitation, the UFC risks losing two of its biggest lightning rods. These men were more than just athletes, they were brands. Their names sold millions of pay-per-views. They created moments that transcended the sport. And now, one is tangled in lawsuits and public spectacle. The other is accused of ducking a younger lion. Their exits may not be graceful, but they seem inevitable. Bruce Buffer's retirement underscores the larger metaphor. The octagon is changing. A voice we associated with greatness, with anticipation, and with fighting history is stepping away. And when the man who called every legend to battle decides he's done, it sends a signal to everyone else. The golden age is over. The UFC must now look to the next generation to carry the weight. The question is, who are they? Tom Aspinall, with his composed, cerebral approach to heavyweight violence, might become the face of the UFC's big man division, if he can draw Jones into battle and win. Ilia Topuria, brash, undefeated, and explosive, is already drawing comparisons to McGregor, not because he's trying to imitate, but because he's genuinely magnetic. But charisma alone isn't enough. He'll need a legacy fight, maybe against a legend like Holloway or Volkanovski again. Shavkat Rakhmonov, quiet and dangerous, could become a Kamaru Usman-like force in the welterweight division, dominating without drama. Bo Nickel or Ian Machado Gary, though green, are stirring interest. They have the youth, the style, and the camera presence. But can they handle the pressure that comes with superstardom? This week's court ruling may not bar him from fighting altogether, but it's another example of how far the man has strayed from the mindset that made him a legend. The Conor who slept in gyms and knocked out future champions in under a minute is long gone. In his place is a business tycoon in Versace robes, tweeting from hot tubs, brawling with DJs in Spain, launching forged Irish stout, and riding a wave of courtroom dates and social media meltdowns. Yet, he's still the most talked-about fighter in the world. Why? Because love him or hate him, McGregor brings gravity. He makes people feel something. In victory, he was the brash Irish assassin. In defeat, he was Shakespearean. Fans either rooted for him to rise again or relished every stumble. But either way, they cared. That's the true McGregor paradox. Even when he loses, he wins attention. The UFC knows it. Dana White knows it. Chandler knows it. That's why, even with another courtroom L, there will always be chatter about just one more fight. The only question left is whether Conor still has the heart to chase greatness, or if he's just chasing ghosts in courtrooms and on social media. Jon Jones has accomplished more in the octagon than perhaps anyone in UFC history. Youngest champion ever, undefeated in all but name, dominant across 2 divisions, victories over the greatest light heavyweights of all time. And yet, the cloud never lifted. PED suspensions, arrests, no contests, Twitter wars, strip titles. The tale of Jon Jones is Shakespearean in its own right, brilliance marred by chaos. Now, on the verge of solidifying himself as the greatest heavyweight as well, he hesitates. The public perception is damning. He's scared of Aspinall. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe it's an injury. Maybe it's a strategic move. But perception, especially in MMA, is reality. What could have been? Imagine this. Jones versus Ngannou. Madison Square Garden. For the undisputed title. We never got it. Now imagine. Jones versus Aspinall. The undefeated veteran versus the new alpha. That, too, may slip through our fingers. If Jones walks away, he'll walk away as a legend, but one with what IFS trailing behind him like shadows. And to many, the GOAT doesn't run. He fights. Bruce Buffer is more than a voice. He was a maestro, a ringmaster, a ceremonial figure who understood the rhythm and emotion of the sport better than anyone. His timing was perfect. His presence, electrifying. His voice, unmistakable. His retirement isn't just symbolic, it's spiritual. It represents the departure of a piece of MMA's soul. Buffer stood in the cage for the highest highs and the lowest lows. He announced retirements and coronations. His tone shifted with the stakes. And when he shimmied, when he spun, when he leaned into the mic to bellow, I me, the world stood still. His exit will mark the end of an era, one fans will never truly get back. The UFC would be wise to give him his own Hall of Fame night, his own moment. He wasn't a fighter, but he fought for this sport, with his voice every single week. So here we are, Conor McGregor losing in court. Bruce Buffer announcing his last dance. Jon Jones fading from the fire. And in the wings, the next wave waits. Topuria, Aspinall, Shavkat, Gary, and others, ready to write their own chapters. The UFC can't rely on the past anymore. It is to trust in the chaos that made it great. Let the next stars rise not through manipulation, but through merit. Let fights be made not because of fame, but because of fearlessness. Let the octagon remain the place where the brave prove their worth, not just their marketability. Because when Bruce Buffer shouts it's time, for the last time, the question becomes, time for the next generation, time for redemption, time for legacy, not just virality, time for real fights, real stories, and real greatness.